Content warning. This episode contains real-life experiences of youth talking about mental health challenges such as eating disorders, suicide, racism trauma, and sexual violence, which might be disturbing to listeners.
I'm Danica Leung, and I wrote a graphic novel about my mental health journey during the pandemic. It was chosen for Speaking Our Truths, the ISM Youth Files, a project produced by Media Rights in Portland, Oregon. Many young people faced mental health challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. I definitely reached a mental low during the pandemic myself. A big part of this was the social isolation and loneliness that came from online schooling. I'm Danica Leung, 19 years old in Portland, Oregon, a rising sophomore at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am one of the writers of the ISM Youth Files project. I titled my graphic novel Good Kid because I grew up fixated on the word good and the expectations of what it means as an Asian American kid. One panel in my novel shows good to mean being an academic overachiever or to be extracurricularly excellent. The next panel shows me being asked how I'm doing. And though I say I'm doing good, like I'm physically and mentally well, I point out that no matter how I feel, I kind of always have to say I'm doing good. It's as if we're not allowed to be suffering and to not be well in our society. Which begs the question I ask in the next scene to a therapist. How do I know when I'm better? I titled my graphic novel Good Kid because I grew up fixated on the word good and the expectations of what it means as an Asian American kid. One panel in my novel shows good to mean being an academic overachiever or to be extracurricularly excellent. The next panel shows me being asked how I'm doing. And though I say I'm doing good, like I'm physically and mentally well, I point out that no matter how I feel, I kind of always have to say I'm doing good. It's as if we're not allowed to be suffering and to not be well in our society, which begs the question I ask in the next scene to a therapist. How do I know when I'm better? The next two youth writers have asked that question on their own mental health journeys. They both have experienced and survived life-altering trauma and sought help during the pandemic. Episode 4, Recovery from Trauma. Isabella Santana is 18 and lives in Torrence, California. She and her two sisters are triplets. They were competitive and fought a lot. During the pandemic, their relationship worsened.
We fought often. We were mean and nasty to each other. You know, kids can be mean sometimes, and we were pretty mean to each other. So we did not have a good relationship, but we still cared for each other because at the end of the day, we're sisters. And they definitely took note that something was up because when I was 12, things started changing drastically for me. I got really angry. It was anger. I was so angry. Like, we're talking like I threw a vase at my sister once because I was so angry. Like screaming, punching things, throwing things, just really, really bad anger. And then I'd get mad at myself for it. And I'd feel terrible because I didn't know where it was coming from. Because I'm not a mean person. I would consider myself a nice person. So all that anger and like throwing things and saying mean things and hurting people I love, it was really out of character for me. So it was very jarring. It just really hurt my self-esteem because I started thinking to myself, what's wrong with me? Why am I acting like this? Why can't I control my emotions? And my sisters took note of that. It was like glass. Like, as I was walking on thin ice. Like, at school, I could maintain my composure because I felt like I had no choice to maintain my composure. And I think that was a problem. I like try to keep it all together. So when I got home, any little thing would just set me apart. And then just everything would, like the glass would crack. I would fall. I would just go completely stuck in my emotions, completely devoured by my anger. And it's like my vision would go red. That's all I could do. All I could think about was how angry I was and what I was going to do next.
Isabella wrote her essay about how the fixation on food and dieting during the COVID-19 lockdown changed the way she looked at herself.
Probably was the worst thing that ever happened for me in terms of my mental health. In my essay, I talk about it. It started with the food. Like, I this is a whole social frenzy to like get thin. You know, don't gain the COVID-19. Don't, everyone was out there running and lifting weights. The gym material was out of stock on Amazon. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to continue. I was on a diet before COVID started, and I was about to basically like, this isn't worth my time, this is my energy, and just move on. But then COVID hit, there was this social frenzy to like get fit, lose weight, eat healthy, and that diet turned into anorexia, basically. It spiraled really, really quick into really scary, like scarily underweight and not healthy in any way. I started because I thought I was going to get healthy. I thought losing weight was going to make me healthy, which it didn't. It did not. It made me extremely unhealthy, extremely weak. I was 15 and I was having like the heart issues of like an 80-year-old because my heart was so weak from malnutrition. And it's like terrifying. It would have never gotten that bad had it not been for the pandemic, because I was alone in my room. I had all the time in the world to exercise because there was basically no school for me. My parents were busy trying to figure out like what they were gonna do. So I could wake up like at 11 a.m., eat like a banana for breakfast, and then not eat till like 1:30. It was just terrible.
The dieting affected her physical health so much, she sought medical help.
Yeah, because when I went to a dietitian sometime around May, and she was like, sweetie, you're not, like, you have to stop. Like, you're not going to make it if you keep on doing this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to you. But then I started like feeling the heart palpitations right around that time. And it was terrifying. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Like, this can't, I can't, 15, what is happening? And then later, at some, I don't know when the shift happened, but something shifted. And I was like, oh wait, I can die. I was like, that wouldn't be too bad. Maybe then, at least if I die, I'll die thin. At least if I die, I won't have to deal with like all these thoughts in my head and feeling, worthless all the time. And from there, it slowly started growing and growing and growing and growing.
But it was her once combative sisters who figured out what was going on and alerted their parents.
I was just really sad. And I felt terrible about myself and my worth and my body. And, I was fighting with my family because they knew that I was doing this. And they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, you guys know what we were fighting because they were trying to get me to stop. I was trying to continue. And it was just horrible. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of having an eating disorder. I'm sick of, being sick and feeling like I'm dying every day. And B, I'm sick of feeling this way and feeling sad and depressed and just worthless all the time.
Finding help for Isabella nearby during the pandemic proved difficult, as she writes in her essay, More Than a Joke. In June of 2020, her family loaded up the car and drove out of California to Wicksburg, Arizona, so Isabella could get help.
I spent 2.5 months at an eating disorder facility where I faked recovery and happiness. I came home in a good physical condition, but eager to relapse. I wanted to relapse, and that's exactly what I did. I took no time in seeking in old behaviors and introducing new ones. As I did, my mental state worsened. My depression severity shot up exponentially. With it came the reintroduction of suicidal thoughts, which only seemed to worsen as my dosage of Prozac increased. This hopelessness and despair led me to the final resort, suicide. I remember my first attempt in November quite vividly. I found hydrocodone in my mom's medicine cabinet, painkillers prescribed to her after a back injury. I sneaked 12 pills into my room. One night, I took 10, saving 2 for the next time I wanted to get high. I really had no idea what they were going to do to me. All I knew is that I wanted my pain to end. I handed myself over to death that day, hoping that it would take me away from this world. Didn't happen. I woke up the next morning extremely hungover, but alive. Here's the thing about suicide. It's a parasite. I used every single waking second following my first attempt planning my next attempt. This time, I would starve myself to death. This time, I would succeed.
According to the Center for Suicide Prevention and Research, suicide is the second leading cause of death for individuals in the U.S. aged 5 to 24 years old. Youth suicide rates also increased during the pandemic, and a history of prior suicide attempts is the most important risk factor for further attempts. In her essay, Isabella wrote candidly about her suicide attempts. Sometimes, anger and aggression can be signs of depression in youth.
People walked on eggshells around me, worried that if they said the wrong thing, I would attempt suicide. My relationships with my family fractured as I became more violent and aggressive. My self-destructive behaviors completely spiraled out of control. I made multiple trips to psychiatric hospitals, riding in ambulances and even a cop car to make sure I would get there safely. At one point, I felt so exhausted. Not exhausted of living, but exhausted of feeling suicidal. It took up all my mental and physical energy. I spent so many nights curled up in a ball in my bed, begging for the thoughts to stop, but they wouldn't go away. I would try so hard to focus on something else, but a little frustration or inconvenience upset me so much that suicide felt like the only answer to my problem. My life felt like it was falling apart, the little things that gave me stability falling into a chasm of emptiness. My fight against my demons came closer to its end, and I wasn't the victor. The weight of existence, the pain of living when feeling suicidal crushed me slowly. I tightroped between life and death, dangerously teetering towards death. I tried so hard to keep myself afloat, but all I did was sink deeper into my thoughts and feelings. I couldn't enjoy anything. I saw no meaning in life. I convinced myself that my life would be painful forever. I felt helpless. My thoughts sucked me under and took all the joy out of my life. I needed someone to save me, but only I could save myself. Nobody could save me from me. I couldn't stop my behaviors. It seemed as if my fate to die by suicide was sealed. And yet, I survived. By some miracle, I made it to the other side. I found happiness and meaning in life again. I dedicated myself to my recovery and worked hard every single day to stay mentally stable. It took all my energy and effort, and it couldn't have been more worth it. My views of life completely changed as I went through my recovery. The thing that changed the most was my view on suicide. In the past, I considered it as a joke, later as a last resort, then as something comforting. Now, I see suicide for what it really is, a lie. Suicide tells its victims that others will be happy without him. This couldn't be further from the truth. My loved ones suffered so deeply while I remained in an unstable condition.
Isabella credits her loved ones and her family for her recovery.
And at first, my parents were really against me getting treatment. They didn't think it was necessary. They thought like we could do it as a family together ourselves and work through it. But they soon learned that that wasn't the case. And once they learned that that was the case, they went all in and they just did as much research as they could. They appealed insurance many, many times to get the proper coverage that I needed for my treatment. They worked really hard so that they could pay for it. They worked really, really hard for me to be able to stay in treatment, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Isabella Santana's full essay is featured in the book Speaking Our Truths, available on all platforms where books are sold. It's also on the Media Rights website, where you can also download a free mental health toolkit. Just go to mediarights.org. The National Suicide Hotline is available 24 hours a day, every day, by calling 988. Another incredible young woman who has faced and overcome trauma is KyLynn Lucio. KyLynn is a 17-year-old Native American woman from the Lower Sioux tribe who lives in Morton, Minnesota. In her essay, KyLynn wrote that the struggles Indigenous peoples can face are ignored by mainstream media.
Tomo, you ain't make this.
The things that traumatized me, like the drunken fights and my dad leaving, happened for a reason. The drunken fights were showing me what alcohol can do to you, especially being Native American. Drinking and doing drugs is a horrible idea overall. Since Native Americans suffer most from alcohol and drug addictions, I am so proud of Natives who are recovering from addiction. I have never done alcohol or drugs, and I don't plan to. I am glad I get to teach my younger siblings and cousins the right path. I can help lead them to the red road. The red road in Native culture is the positive and sacred path, basically the good path of life.
Native American and Alaska Native women in the U.S. are 2.5 times more likely to experience sexual assault than non-Native women. That's according to VawNet.org, a project of the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. When she was 15, KyLynn wrote honestly about her experiences with sexual violence. She says the pandemic made this trauma even more horrific.
But then getting closer to the teenage years, I was first sexually violated, and it was by my own cousin. I was so confused about what she was doing, but I knew I felt disgusted with her, myself, and my body. The second time I was sexually violated was 2020 and by my boyfriend of a year. I knew what was happening this time, but both times I felt as if someone died, like a part of me died every time it happened. Nobody knew about it the first time because I didn't completely understand it, but the second time, I told my family and my therapist about 4 months after it happened. Second time was 10 times worse. I put my whole trust into that boy, and he betrayed me. This took a huge toll on me and my mental health. I felt depressingly not me. Recently, I was assaulted for the third time. February 26, 2022, the day my life changed completely. It was not a long relationship before this boy assaulted me. We dated for 2 to 3 weeks. It destroyed me completely. It was exactly 1 year and 2 months after I was assaulted the second time. I felt broken. I wanted to die. That night, I came home and I was alone. My family had gone to my grandparents without me. I felt alone, and I was having deep emotions I had never imagined. I was angry, sad, depressed, suicidal, shocked, and alone. It was the worst night of my life. I felt like I had just lost myself to the darkness. The next morning, I told my grandma and my mom what he did to me. Not only did he affect me, he affected my whole family. We all hugged each other and cried. I started missing school a lot because he went to my school and had my same classes. I couldn't even get myself up in the morning. All I could think about was what he did to me. So my mom told the caseworker. I was then forced to report the incident. I wasn't ready for this. I was trying to process all my feelings, and I already had to report it 2 days later. I was angry, but I knew it was what had to be done. A detective came into my home and questioned me about what happened that night. This was very traumatizing. The detective would ask me what time was that around. I would tell him I don't know. I'm a teenager. I don't care about the time unless I have to be somewhere at a specific time and place. But I had to answer these kinds of questions so many times. Now, whenever I hang out with my friends or with a guy, I look at the time at least every 10 minutes. I am scared of being violated again. I only trust a small circle of people.
1 in 3 Native American and Alaska Native women have been sexually assaulted, according to an Amnesty International report. It goes on to say that the USA has formed a complex interrelation between federal, state, and tribal jurisdictions that undermines tribal authority. This allows perpetrators of violence against Native women to evade justice. The report says that the federal government has made matters worse by chronically under-resourcing law enforcement agencies and Indigenous health service providers. And the most recent available data shows U.S. attorneys' offices declined to prosecute 46% of sexual assaults and 67% of sexual abuse cases in Native American communities. Because of this, most Native women won't even report these crimes. But KyLynn in her essay writes about trying to hold her abusers accountable anyway.
Both of my recent assaults, second and third time, I was harassed by someone mutual or related to my abuser. The third time I was assaulted, my abuser's mom harassed me. I worked at my local market as a cashier, and she came in the Monday after they received my restraining order against her son, my abuser. She told me to stop messaging her son. I wasn't messaging her son at all. I didn't plan on messaging him either. I was just raped by him. I didn't want to keep contact. That's the whole reason I got a restraining order against him. When she confronted me, her breath was on me. She was close, very close. My coworkers told her to leave, and my managers told me to go to the office. So I did, and I ended up going home and reporting her. A week or two later, we had a court hearing because she didn't want a harassment restraining order against her, especially because I worked at the only local market. I understood, but my safety was my priority. She kept making excuses like if I was working and there was an emergency. Even the judge was annoyed. We had to do a second court hearing. This time she got what she wanted. The harassment restraining order was taken down. I screamed, crying after the Zoom meeting. I did not feel safe working at my local market anymore, so I put my 2 weeks notice in. She hasn't harassed me since, but I still have my worries about if I see her.
Afterward, KyLynn even called her boyfriend to ask why he had assaulted her.
It got to a point where I was crying, and then I got super angry at him, and I was like, why would you do that to me? I told you that I've been through this before. And then he started crying, tried to victimize himself, and he was like, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I did that. And so he took accountability. But the second time that I was assaulted, there's no accountability at all. Not even to this day, he still won't. And if he hears my name to the slightest bit, he will get mad. A mutual acquaintance, I guess you could say. She was telling me, oh, he just doesn't like talking about you. And to me, that's a sign of that he's guilty. Because why would you not want to talk about me?
The path to recovery for sexual trauma survivors is complex. There can be an intense internalized sense of shame, post-traumatic stress, depression, eating disorders, dissociative identity disorders, low self-esteem, and difficulty maintaining romantic relationships. Reconnecting with yourself and working with a therapist are among the steps that can be taken to support recovery. The website choosingtherapy.com has some helpful ways to aid in healing. Everyone has a different process, but it is important to take steps toward recovery. Otherwise, the impact of sexual trauma can be lifelong and devastating. The National Sexual Assault Hotline can be reached 24 hours a day, every day, at 1-800-656-4673. KyLynn Lucio's full essay is in our book, Speaking Our Truths, available where books are sold. Both Isabella Santana and KyLynn Lucio have found ways to move past their life-changing traumas and work towards recovery and healing. KyLynn writes of the lessons she learned about her own strength.
It was so bad that I had so much insecurities and loss of self-worth. I doubted myself so much while being surrounded by these bad influences. I'm so happy that they are gone. I'm so happy with my life without them. They love to bring up the past, and that's how I know that I'm the mature and bigger person. I am able to understand experiences and learn from them. I genuinely do learn from these life lessons, and I am grateful to be. I used to dwell on that I should have known, but I wouldn't have known unless I went through it. I did go through those hard experiences, but everything happens for a reason. Something I can learn from this is that there can always be a positive outlook on things, even in the bad.
Both Isabella and KyLynn now look to support others who may also be struggling. They realize the value of having people in your corner and having support systems for when you can't do it alone.
I think that was the moment when I realized, okay, I'm going to be okay. Like, I got this. Like, there's people here. There's proof here that I'm worthy of love. And if I can be loved, I can love myself. That was kind of the message that I got from that.
I say it's just like a matter of realizing that there are people around me that also go through the same things and they hide it the way that I did. So I'm just trying to learn how to be mindful of what others might be going through, because I know asking for help is not easy. Everyone's different, but for me, it was a lot easier talking about my assault to someone who also experienced assault, because they're able to understand and feel the feelings that I feel because they've been in my spot before.
Suicide used to be my comforter, even though it destroyed me. I will fight to raise awareness from suicide and change the way it is used in conversation. Life will get hard again. I know that. I will rise. I will learn to love life again, and I will live.
For me, mental wellness is when you feel content and at ease with yourself and your current life situation. Maybe it doesn't have to be that everything's perfect, but you can accept the way things are and you look forward to things improving or things continuing to be as good as they are. It is a state in which you don't have to be happy all the time. In the book Burnout, The Secret of Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Nagoski, they described wellness not as a state of being or a state of mind. It is a state of action. It is moving freely through all the tunnels, cycles, and oscillations of being human. Perhaps this is another way to describe what it means to be in recovery from trauma. It is an active process where you may experience reminders and feel emotions about those reminders. And when you get to the stuck moments in the tunnel, you find ways to move through by asking for help, being compassionate with yourself, and knowing this is also part of the process, and it will get better. For more info about this project and the book Speaking Our Truths, the ISM Youth Files, or to download a free mental health toolkit, visit mediarights.org. I'm Danica Leung.
The ISM Youth Files project received support from Ronnie LaCrute, the Regional Arts and Culture Council, the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Oregon Arts Commission, the Collins Foundation, Oregon Humanities, Oregon Community Foundation, Western States Arts Federation, the City of Portland Arts Healing Grant, and individual donors. Special thanks to our partner, Oregon Children's Theater, who co-created a mental health toolkit for this project. Get a free download of the toolkit or more info on the Speaking Our Truths book at mediarights.org, mediarites.org. Order your copy of the Speaking Our Truths book at Amazon or request it at your library or school. Music for this show was composed and performed by Tomo Singh. Hear his music on all platforms. The ISM Youth Files project was produced by Demilo Roberts with Amanda Anderson and Samson Siarath. Literary Works editor was Sandra DeHelen. Our mental health consultant is Dr. Eleanor Heel Kashiwabara. Our engineer was Clark Salisbury, who provides additional music. This is a Media Rights production.